Good afternoon, students. Today I start with the new chapter, that is gravitation. Right. So marks allotted for this chapter, that is 8 marks. So out of 8 marks, one question for 3 marks and one question for 5 marks. So in this 5 marks, they may ask for theory or problem. Right. So ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಕೆಪ್ಲರ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಕೆಪ್ಲರ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ರಿಮೂವ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಲ ಕೇಳಿರೋದು 5 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಗೆ ಕೆಪ್ಲರ್ ಲಾಸ್. ಸೊ ಕೆಪ್ಲರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಲಾಸ್ ಇತ್ತು. ಸೊ 3 ಲಾಸ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲನೇಷನ್ 5 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ರೈಟ್. ಸೊ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ರಿಮೂವ್ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಡಿರೈವೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಪಾಸಿಬಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ 3 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳೋ ಡಿರೈವೇಷನ್ಸ್ ನ 5 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳೋ ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ರೈಟ್. So ಇಲ್ಲಾಂದ್ರೆ ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಅಗೇನ್ 5 marks further divide into 2 into 1. So 2 marks to 2 question and 1 marks ಗೆ 1 question ಕೇಳೋ ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಇದೆ. Right? So what is gravitation? Right? So gravitation ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? So in the simple terms, so gravitation is the force of attraction between any two objects or any two bodies. Right? So what is gravitation? Gravitation is the force of attraction between any two bodies or objects. Right? So that we call as the gravitation. So the gravitation was first observed by the physics scientist, that is Galileo. Right. So first observed by the Galileo. So Galileo observed that every objects, irrespective of their masses, will accelerate towards the center of Earth with a constant acceleration. Right. So that means irrespective of their masses. So objects are there. Every object having different masses. Right. So all objects same mass irodilla. So different masses irutte. So irrespective of masses, all the objects attracts, that means accelerates towards the center of Earth with a constant acceleration. Right. So if we consider this one as Earth, irrespective of masses. So this object having less mass and this one having heavier mass. Right. So every object will move or attract towards the center of Earth, that means accelerate towards the center of Earth irrespective of their masses. Irrespective means mass different irutte. So ಕೆಲವು objects lesser mass irutte, ಕೆಲವು objects heavier mass irutte. So all objects will accelerate towards the center of Earth with constant acceleration. So this was explained by Galileo. We find the relation for this statement. So Galileo just to theoretically given the statement. In statement every objects of different masses or irrespective masses accelerates towards the center of Earth with constant acceleration. So this was the statement given by the Galileo. So ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ತರದ್ದು mathematical relation ಇರಲ್ಲ. Right? So mathematical relation ಯಾವಾಗ ಬರುತ್ತೋ, so that time we say that the statement is valid. Right? So that was series experiments which was conducted by Newton. Right. So hence the law name given as Newton's law of gravitation. In another word, so this statement is also called universal law of gravitation. So what the Newton states, So Newton series of experiments na conduct ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಒಂದು ರಿಲೇಷನ್ ನ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. So ಆ ರಿಲೇಷನ್ ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. So that statement we call as the Newton's law of gravitation or universal law of gravitation, right? So in the name itself, gravitation is the force of attraction between any two bodies. How it relates with the two objects, right? So that was stated by Newton, right? So the statement of the Newton's law of gravitation is every body or every object in the universe attract another body, right? So every body or every object in the universe attract the another body with the force of attraction is directly proportional to the product of their masses, right, and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So this one is the statement, right? So statement of Newton's law of gravitation or universal law of gravitation. So ತುಂಬಾ important statement, right? So ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ statement ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ every body, so ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇರಬಹುದು, ಆ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ another object na attract ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. So attract ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ so there exists a force. So due to that force two bodies will attract each other, right? So a force ಯಾವ ತರ ರಿಲೇಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಆ two bodies ಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ so that force is directly proportional to the product of their masses, right? So explanation for Newton's law of gravitation. Consider two objects or two bodies of mass m1 and another object having mass m2, right? So your object is having two different masses m1 and m2. So these two masses are separated by a distance. Two objects, so distance of separation we taken that one as r, where r is the distance of separation between the two objects, right? So from the statement object m1 attracts object m2, so there is a force of attraction between these two objects, right? So that force of attraction is directly proportional to the product of their masses. Product is the multiplication of two masses, that is m1 and m2, right? So the force of attraction F, that is directly relates with the product. Product means multiplication of two masses. One is m1 into m2, right? So the next statement is and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them, right? So this term is important. What? That is the inversely proportional. So inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So distance between them means distance between the two masses, right? So ಇಲ್ಲಿ distance between two masses ಯಾವುದಿದೆ? R, right? So that is F is inversely proportional. Inversely proportional means 1 divided by square of the distance. So distance we taken R, so square means R square, right? So the force of attraction between any two objects is directly proportional to the product of two masses or product of their masses and The force of attraction is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between two masses, right? So illirodu ಎಷ್ಟು terms ಇದೆ? Three terms ಇದೆ. One is mass of one object, so here mass of the another object and the distance between the two objects, right? So force of attraction, that is the statement, right? So the force of attraction is directly proportional to the product of their masses, that means multiplication of two masses, and inversely proportional to the square of distance. So ಇವೆರಡನ್ನು combine ಮಾಡಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, that is F is directly proportional m1 m2 divided by r square, right? So this is the statement of Newton's law of gravitation or universal law of gravitation. So iduna navenanta kariತೀವಿ mathematical form, right? So now we need to remove the proportionality constant, right? So ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಡೆಗೂ ನಾವು proportionality ಇಂದ is equal to ಗೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ there is a one constant, so that we taken as g. So where g is a constant, so now proportional ಇಂದ is equals to ಬರ್ತಿದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ we need to add one constant, so that constant is g, right? So g into m1 m2 divided by r square, right? So this is the statement and this one is the mathematical form for the force of attraction between the two objects, right? So tumba important. So same concept ಮೇಲೆ ನಮಗೆ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಇಯರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, right? So ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ ಚಾರ್ಜಸ್ ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, right? So here the masses. So statement, mathematical form. So again force is a vector, right? So we need to represent this in the vector form, right? So the SI unit of force is Newton, right? So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ formula change ಇರಬಹುದು. Up to now we discussed F is equals to m into a. So here we are discussing F is equals to g into m1 m2 divided by r square. So again here the SI unit is Newton, is kg meter per second square, right? So ತುಂಬಾ important statement. So 1 marks ಅಥವಾ 2 marks ಗೆ statement explain Newton's law of gravitation ಅಥವಾ universal law of gravitation ಅಂತ ಕೇಳೋ chances ಇರುತ್ತೆ, right? So next in vector form, right? So vector form, again here we considering the two objects having two different masses, we consider that masses as point masses. So idu nimage gottilla point mass. So what are point mass means? The total mass of an object is concentrated at one particular point. So antadunna navu enanta kariತೀವಿ point mass. Why we are considering this as point mass means the mass or the dimensions of the object is very less compared to the distance between the two objects, right? So distance between two objects ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ compared to that of the dimensions. That means r is very less than that of the mass, right? So that's why we taken that as the point mass, right? So consider two point masses m1. So point mass ಅಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಏನು ರೆಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂತೀವಿ? Point, right? So consider another one m2. So here we are representing the gravitational law in terms of vector form, right? So first we need to find the position vector of m1 and position vector of m2, right? So for that again we need to write the coordinate system x and y axis, right? So this one is the origin, right? So position vector is always starts from the origin to represent the position of the object, right? So position vector is denoted by r. So here 1 is the suffix, so we taken r1. R1 is the position vector of object 1 or mass 1, right? So for the position vector of the second object or second mass, we taken that one as r2, right? So there is a force of attraction between these two objects, right? So that indicates what? Force. F. So there is force of attraction between the 2 point masses. So force is again a vector, so we can represent in this direction. So that is what? The displacement vector. That is vector R. So from triangle of vector addition, vector R1 plus vector R, that is equals to vector R2, right? So vector R is equals to vector R2 minus vector R1, right? So now vector R is the displacement vector, that is the distance between the 2 point masses. Now M1 exerts the force on M2, that means the attractive force, right? So the force is acting in this direction, we are getting the vector R in the opposite direction, right? So in vector form, F, that is equals to G into M1 M2 divided by R square into minus R cap, right? So that is in the vector form, F. So in the 1 marks in case the right the vector form of Newton's law of gravitation, M1 M2 divided by R square. So R cap, we can write that one as vector R by R. So that is from the definition of unit vector. Vector R is equals to vector R by magnitude of vector R, right? So this we get the final expression minus G M1 M2 divided by R cube into vector R. So this is in the vector form, right? So 1 marks again. ಕೆಲವು chances ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So this gives only the magnitude, right? So here it gives what? Along with the magnitude, direction also it indicates, right? So from Newton's third law of motion, right? So every action having equal and opposite reaction. That means M1 exerts a force on M2, so that we can take F12, right? So same force which is exerted by M2 on M1, that is F21. So those two are, we can write magnitude of force F12, that is equals to magnitude of force F21, that is equals to F, right? So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆ magnitude 5 newtons force exert ಆಗ್ತದೆ, attraction force M1 due to M2 ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನಮಗೆ 5 newton force exert ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, that is due to M1, right? So M1 ಮೇಲೆ M2 ಎಷ್ಟು force act ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೋ M2 ಮೇಲೆ M1 ಕೂಡ ಅಷ್ಟೇ force act ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So that's why we taken those two magnitudes are same. So modulus ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದ್ರೆ that indicates what? Magnitude, right? So from Newton's third law we can write that one F12 is always equals to minus F21, right? Equal and opposite. So statement of universal law of gravitation, mathematical form for the universal law of gravitation. Next, vector form for the universal law of gravitation, right? So the next concept is, here we consider only the two masses. If more than two masses, what about the law of gravitation? So here only we consider two masses, right? So if we have more than two masses, then how the force is acting on any one object. So ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಒಂದು object ಮೇಲೆ number of masses ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ತರ force act ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, right? So that is from the superposition principle, right? So vector form important. So 2 marks ಗೆ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ ಅಥವಾ 1 marks ಗೆ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೇಳಿದರೆ. So 2 marks ಗೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಡಯಾಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬರ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು explain ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. 1 marks ಗೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ only directly you need to write the formula, right? So consider point masses m1, right? So consider one more point masses m2, point masses m3, and somewhere here m4, right? So the force exerted on mass m1 due to all other three masses, right? So first we need to find the force between these two masses, that is between m1 and m3, and next m1 and m2, and next m1 and m4, right? So the sum of forces or the net forces acting on the mass m1 due to all other three masses, right? So if we draw the straight line joining between the 2 points, that gives what? The distance between two masses, right? That we can take r31. It is vector r31, right? So here vector r21, vector r41, right? So we are going to calculate the net force acting on first mass due to all other three masses, right? So force on m1 due to m2, right? So first we need to find the force on m1 that is due to m2, right? So that f12, why f12 is force on 1 due to second mass, force on first mass due to second mass, right? That is equals to g into m1 m2 divided by r21 square into r21 cap, right? So next, force on m1 due to m3, right? So that is f13, that is equals to g into m1 m3 divided by r31 square, right? So that direction r31, right? So there is a force of attraction, always it is f31. Here we are getting f21, right? Right? So force on m1 due to m4, m1 m3 due to m1 m4 due to m1, right? f41, that is equals to g into m1 m4 divided by r41 square r41 cap. So that means the direction of force So from the principle of superposition, right? So we can write net force F1, force on 1, that is equals to F21 plus F31 plus F41, right? So that is equals to G into M1 M2 divided by R21 square into R21 cap plus G into M1 M3 divided by R31 square R31 cap plus G into M1 M4 divided by R41 square R41 cap. right? That is the force on one. So ನಾವು ಇದೇ ತರನೇ ನೀವು ಯಾವುದು ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೂ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. Either you can take M2 or you can take M3 or you can take M4, right? ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಸೇಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲಿ ಫೋರ್ಸ್ ನಾವು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಇದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ ಆಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಟ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಜನರಲ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಫರ್ದರ್ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ರೈಟ್ ಜನರಲಿ F is equals to G M1, that is mass 1 into summation of Mi divided by Ri1 square into Ri1 cap, right? So I starts from 2 to n. Right? So summation means sum of all the individual terms. So I value starts from 2. So initially first I get 200, 2I, that is 21, numerator will get 2 barutte. So again G M1 M2 divided by R21. So next 3 kotre M1 M3 divided by R31, second term. Next 4 kotre G M1 M4 divided by R41 into R41 cap, right? So this is for the multiple masses, right? So Newton's law of gravitation for multiple masses, right? So this will clearly understand by solving. These are all vectors, right? So vectors now we can't directly add, again by the method of vector law of addition, because it has the direction. So magnitude jotege namage, so while solving problem you can clearly understand the concept. So I already said gravitation is the force of attraction between any two bodies or any two masses. So hence gravitation is the weakest forces among the fundamental forces, right? So gravitation is the weakest fundamental force in nature, right? So ಇದು ಕೂಡ ನೆನಪಲ್ಲಿರಬೇಕು. ಇದು ಕಾಂಪಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಜೊತೆಗೆ 1 ಮಾರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, which is the weakest forces in nature. So ಯಾವುದು ನಮಗೆ weakest forces in nature ಅಂದ್ರೆ gravitation is the weakest force in nature, right? So here fundamental forces. So again this is from the physical world chapter, right? So physical world chapter ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. So ನಮಗೆ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಗೆ ಕೇಳೋ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಕೂಡ ಇದೇ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So mention the fundamental forces in nature, or write any two fundamental forces in nature, athwa which is the weakest force in nature or which one is the strongest force in nature. So these two questions alli yavado question ಆ chapter ಇಂದ ಇದ್ದೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, right? So ಆ chapter 2 marks ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ so fundamental forces in nature ಯಾವ್ಯಾವ್ದು ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ so ಅದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಹೈಲೈಟ್ ಇದಾಗಿದೆ. Fundamental forces in nature, so very important for 2 marks. So idu ee chapter al barodilla, so this will comes under physical world, right? So first one is gravitational force. So that is the force of attraction between any two bodies, so that is the gravitational force. So the second one is electromagnetic force. So the second one is electromagnetic force. The third one is weak nuclear force, right? The third one is weak nuclear force, and the last one is strong nuclear force, right? So these are the 4 fundamental forces in nature. So ಈ ನಾಲ್ಕು ಕೂಡ ಏನಿದೆ ನಮಗೆ fundamental forces in nature. So weakest is the gravitational force. So gravitational force is the weakest right? So the next strongest force is the, so ಯಾವುದು ನಮಗೆ strongest force, strong nuclear force is the strongest force in nature. So maximum times ಕೇಳೋ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ mention the fundamental forces in nature. So 2 marks ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ you can write any two of them, right? So 1 marks ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ which is the weakest force in nature and which is the strongest force in nature. So weakest force ಅಂದಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ weak nuclear force ಅಲ್ಲ, right? So weakest force in nature is the gravitational force, right? So 2 marks ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ write the weakest and strongest forces in nature ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ gravitational force ಜೊತೆಗೆ strong nuclear force. So weakest is the strong gravitational force, strongest is the strong nuclear force, right? So this is a new physical body. So ಇದು ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಏನೇನು ಕೇಳೋ ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಕೂಡ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಬರ್ತದೆ, right? So 2 marks ಇದೆ ಈ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್. So 2 marks ಕೇಳೋ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೂಡ ಇದೆ. ಇಷ್ಟು ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಈ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಇಂದ ಕೇಳೋ ಚಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಕಮ್ಮಿ. ಸೊ ಇದ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು 1 marks ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸೈಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್ ನೇಮ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. So that you can go through the textbook. So textbook ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ವೆನ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೈಂಟಿಸ್ಟ್ ನೇಮ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದ್ಸಲ ಓದಿ, ಆಯ್ತಾ? So 2 marks ಗೆ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಇಷ್ಟಿದೆ, right? So gravitation is the weakest fundamental force in nature. Right? So we have the relation for the force of attraction F, that is equals to G into m1 m2 divided by r square, right? So where G is a constant, where G is a constant, so that named as gravitational constant, right? So ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವೇನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, gravitational constant. So constant ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ that constant has some value, right? So that value is founded by Henry Candish, right? So by conducting the experiment, so and also he given the name that one as Candish experiment. So by doing this experiment, we find the value of the gravitational constant. So ಈ G ಗೆ ಒಂದು value find out ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂತಿದ್ದಾನೆ. So ಆ value ಗೆ ಒಂದು experiment conduct ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಅದು ಯಾವ experiment? That is the Candish experiment, right? So he is a scientist who conducted this experiment to determine the value of G, right? So the experimental setup by him, right? So we considered one bar, right? So where AB is a bar, right? So at the ends of this bar, small lead spheres are attached to this ball, bars, right? So where AB is a bar, to the ends of this bar, small lead spheres are attached, right? So ಒಂದು bar ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು rod na considered ತಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಆ rod ಗೆ at the end of that rod he is connected two small lead spheres, right? So that means lead balls na attach ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. So this ball is made to freely suspended from the rigid support, right? So one rigid support ಇಂದ ಫ್ರೀ ಆಗಿ ಸಸ್ಪೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸಸ್ಪೆಂಡ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಫ್ರೀ ಆಗಿ ಹ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಆಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ by through the wire, right? So this one is the rigid support and this is the connecting wire, right? And this one is the bar and these are the small lead. Lead is a metal, right? So lead spheres, right? So first time considered he considered one metal bar. So onto this metal bar he attached two small lead spheres. So lead na metal du spherical balls ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಎರಡು ends ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ. So next time ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ he freely suspend to the rigid support. So one rigid support ಗೆ ಫ್ರೀ ಆಗಿ ಅದನ್ನ suspend ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, that means hang ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ, right? So next he considered two more large lead balls, that means lead spheres placed in the opposite direction, right? So one lead ball na illi place ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ another one opposite, right? So ಎರಡು ಕೂಡ same size ಇರಬೇಕು, right? So again he considered two large lead spheres. So these are also lead spheres and placed opposite as shown in the diagram, right? So ಎರಡನ್ನು opposite ಆಗಿ place ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, right? So from the statement, that is from the law of gravitation, every object attracts the another object, right? So here also one small lead ball and here also one large lead ball, right? So having two different masses, right? So the large lead ball or large lead sphere attracts the smaller one, that is from the statement, right? So attract ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, it turns, that means it moves towards the larger sphere, right? And it attracts, right? So it will comes downwards, right? So there is a force of attraction which exerted, so this is F. So magnitude ಎರಡು ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಈ ಬಾಲ್ ಲಾರ್ಜರ್ ಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ಹತ್ರ ಅಟ್ರಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಬಾಲ್ ಕೂಡ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇರೋ ಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ಹತ್ರ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಅಟ್ರಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಫೋರ್ಸ್ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಡೌನ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್, right? So first force is, so at point B force is acting upward, at point A the force is acting downward, right? So force is a vector, so one force is acting upward and another force is acting downward which having the same magnitude, right? So ಎರಡು masses same ಇದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಎರಡು masses same ಇದೆ. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು force act ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ act ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋ force ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, same ಇರುತ್ತೆ, right? So force at B that is equals to force at A, that we can take F, right? As the forces are vector, one is acting upward direction and another one is acting downward direction, hence net force that is equals to 0, right? So net force ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ 0, that is because one is acting upward and another one is downward. So ಅದನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ನಾವು ವೆಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ resultant force R is equals to sum of a square plus b square plus 2ab cos theta, right? So one force is acting upward and another force is acting downward. So a value ಏನಿದೆ f ಇದೆ, b value ಕೂಡ ಏನಿದೆ f ಇದೆ. So cos theta value ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ನಮಗೆ 180 degree, right? So 180 degree means -1. So this we get square root of f square plus f square minus 2 f into f. So f into f, again we get f square. So plus f square 2f square minus 2f square, we get that one as 0, right? So directly we can write the net force acting is 0, right? So now again by vectors, resultant of two vectors, right? So when the net force acting is 0, then torque is generated, right? So net force 0 ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ there is a torque, that means torque is twisting, that means rotating force. Torque ನ ನಾವು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, rotating force. So ಈ ಬಾಲ್ ಏನಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ನಮಗೆ rotate ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. So as it is rotating, so there is a twist in the wire. So wire ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, twist ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, right? So that twist or torsional force, that is directly proportional to the angle theta. So ಎಷ್ಟು twist ಆಗಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, right? So ಇಲ್ಲಿ angle theta ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನಮಗೆ angle theta ಇರುತ್ತೆ, right? So already mentioned that torque is nothing but rotational force, right? So that torque in the mathematical form, we have the relation torque is equals to force into perpendicular distance. So if we take an L as the distance from the center, right? So the distance is L, right? So force is acting in this direction. So perpendicular distance is L, that is F into L, right? So here the wire is getting twisting, right? Rotational twist is directly proportional to theta, right? So that is also the force. So that is equals to tau into theta, right? So that rotational twist we call that one as force, right? So that we can write F into L. So what is F? F is the force of attraction between the two objects. So that we can write G is to m1 m2 divided by d square. So here we can take the distance between two masses as d. So this one as m2 and m1, right? So now substituting here g into m1 m2 divided by d square into L, that is equals to tau into theta. So from this, he can find the value of G by determining the angle theta, right? So from the experiment, he found the value of theta G, that is equals to 6.67 into 10 to the power of minus 11, right? That is Newton meter square per kg square. So unit is very important. So from the experiment, he found the value of theta. So how much angle theta is? It is rotating. So he found the value of theta and substituting the value. So he considered the masses. Lead spear the masses considered ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾನೆ. So distance between the two lead spear d ಅಂತ ತಗೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾನೆ, right? So ಅದೆಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ value substitute ಮಾಡಿ simplify ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ he get the value, that is 6.67 into 10 power minus 11 Newton meter square per kg square, right? So by this way, he found the value of gravitational constant, right? So where G is a constant, so that constant has the value 6.67 into 10 power minus 11. So the first value, so is to length ಇದೆ. So next ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. So ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ confuse ಆಗದಲ್ಲ ಇರೋ ತರ ನೆನಪಿಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, right? So G having the value, so hence from this we can find the dimension, right? So dimension of G. So in the ella chapter we can discuss the dimension, right? So dimension of G, how we can write the dimension of G? By using the unit. So unit ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ we can write the dimension, right? So dimension for G, we having the unit Newton meter square per kg square. So Newton ಗೆ ನಾವೇನು ಬರೀತೀವಿ? kg meter per second square, right? So this is for the Newton. So again we having meter square per kg square, right? So in the numerator we have 1 kg, in the denominator kg square. So square and kg get cancelled. So the remaining is meter cube per kg second square, right? So now by using this, we can write the dimension for G, right? So first starts with m. So m under mass, that is kg, denominator is there. So that if we shift to the numerator, it becomes -1, right? So m to the power of -1. So meter, that is for the length L and its power is 3, right? So that is L to the power 3. Next, second is for time, that is also in the denominator. If it shifts to the numerator, it becomes -2, right? So by this way we can write the dimension for the gravitational constant. So dimension ತುಂಬಾ important, ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ, right? So ಮೊನ್ನೆ ನೀಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ, 2020 ನೀಟ್ this year they asked the dimension for stress. So ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು next chapter ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. So dimension ಇಷ್ಟು ಬರೆದ್ರೆ 4 marks ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೀಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ, right? So ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ದಲ್ಲೂ ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಯಾವ ತರ ಬರೀಬೇಕು? ಅಗೇನ್ ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ದ SI ಯೂನಿಟ್, right? So this is about the gravitation, right? So remaining we will discuss in our next class. Thank you.